In the desert with Sergeant Lemereau, you get the idea he doesn't enjoy being called out as the law enforcement for Groom Lake. They've got their own security, he says, but those guys aren't allowed to make arrests. Because remember, they're kind of like security guards. They're not government officials. So they call the sheriff, and I'm the one who always ends up sweating out here. As Lemereau politely threatens to arrest them unless Richards, the photographer, surrenders his film, you can tell he's tired of having to chase the curious away from this place. It seems everyone and their dog has photos of the place, says Richard, as Richard hands over 2 rolls of film. So I don't know why they're trying to protect it. I've seen pictures of it that were taken by the Russian satellite. So Lemereau is sympathetic, but he's also not happy. Now, still, Lemereau does his job, which in this case means conducting a flight interrogation. He requests that Richards and I produce identifying Richards and Webster produce identification, adding, "I don't need you to see your ID, Glenn. We've got your records already." So over the next few minutes, he takes notes of the day's events. Lemereau says that the Lincoln County authorities are growing tired of protecting this place from people who can legally visit it. The district attorney is talking to the higher-ups about getting the sheriff's department out here to getting the sheriff's department out of having to come here. It's a time and money-consuming waste. Now, due completely to an accident of proximity, Lemereau and Lincoln County have been increasingly dragged into Groom Lake's vortex. Each year since 1989, Lincoln County has billed the Air Force about $50,000 for police visits to Groom Lake. Only a few of Lemereau's field interrogations resulted in anything more than paperwork. Most recently, that was on January 2nd of 1992, 7 Las Vegas residents were detained by base security forces toting automatic rifles after the 7 became lost in the desert roads off Groom Lake. They held us at gunpoint, searched our vehicle, and detained us for approximately 2 hours before the highway patrol came, said Connie Ruiz. She was one of the trespassers. They never read us our rights. Now, today, however, it's all friendly. In fact, by the time we return to our vehicles, Lemereau has turned towards a tour guide advising us of the naturally occurring hot spring pool nearby. He says, "That's where I'll be tonight." Climbing into his 4-wheel Dodge, he says, "After chasing you folks down the canyon, I'm going to need to soak the soreness out of me." Now, periodically, despite all the cat and mouse fun and games of secret airbase hunting that may prove Area 51's undoing, nobody has seen little green men or activity of people, even Campbell. Okay? Now, in the next few weeks, again, this is 1994, in the next few weeks, in a Washington federal courtroom, a pair of organizations, the Environmental Crimes Protection and the Protect Government Oversight, will file a citizens' action lawsuit against the Air Force claiming criminal environmental violations and at least 1 possible death caused by the burning of toxic waste on the base. Now, that lawsuit was for real. It named at least 39 former Area 51 employees. Basically, these were folks who worked at Area 51, and they were downwind of the famous burn pits. Those burn pits, basically, they threw everything, including the kitchen sink, into these pits, and they burned them to get rid of the evidence, and so they didn't have to haul the stuff away, much of which was very toxic. The skin that they put around the stealth fighter is very toxic, and many of these people have breathed the fumes and caught cancer, cirrhosis of the liver, or died. Those lawsuits were for real, and they were filed, and that did force them to change some things as to the way Area 51 was ran. So this is about the end of their adventure. Webster writes, "The sun has risen high in the sky now, and as Glenn Campbell drives along the roads leading from the secret air base, he says he doesn't know what he'll do when and if the Groom Lake facility is finally exposed." "I haven't really thought that far ahead," said Campbell, adding that one of the kooky aspects he's enjoyed by being America's Area 51 authority is his notoriety within a strange circle of UFO fans. Campbell says, "I've seen them all." Campbell told the author, Webster, of the day before the outing, he said, "They all come to my door wanting accreditation. The paranoids, the curious, the conspiracy buffs, the people who believe they've been abducted. Now, one of Campbell's favorite visitors was a man who claimed to be Ambassador Merlin II from the planet Draconis. The ambassador hung around the town for a couple of days, Campbell said. He came to my door every morning, and eventually he just left the area. I try not to be judgmental, says Campbell. I try to keep an open mind. Now, as Campbell's Jeep rolls towards a stop sign at the paved highway shoulder, Campbell says that, for the short term, he'll keep overseeing the comings and goings just to see how the story plays out. For a long time now, Campbell says, Groom Lake has served as the ultimate Rorschach inkblot. Anybody can see anything in the sky. If what's happening out there is ever unveiled, a lot of people may be disappointed. And that was from the June 26th, 1994 article in the New York Times, written by Donovan Webster. And friends, that story is the one that got me ultimately interested in Area 51. It had to do with our first trip out there with California Dave. It had to do with the Area 51 Information Center. In fact, when we were out there the first time, the Information Center was there. We knocked on the door, and Campbell wasn't there. So, but first time I went out to Area 51 with California Dave, there really was an Area 51 Information Center. Glenn Campbell really did live there, and it was a different time and a different day. Nowadays, things have changed. We know more than we used to know. The government doesn't deny Area 51 exists anymore because enough people knew about it. I will say that in those early days, some almost 30 years ago, Area 51 was a very, very interesting place. The stories were interesting. The conspiracy theories were harmless and lots of fun. Because you have to remember, back then, not only did you not have social media, you really didn't have cell phones. I think you had cell phones. Let me take it back. I think back in the early 90s, did we have cell phones? Maybe we did, but they were expensive and they certainly didn't work out in the desert, okay? The internet was just starting off. There was no social media. The way that you heard about this type of thing, there was really only one halfway reliable way to hear what was going on in Area 51. And that was via AM radio. And when you were out there, you could hear via the skip Art Bell talking via KFI in Los Angeles, or Kogo out of San Diego, or K-Dawn out of Las Vegas. You could hear Art Bell talking and theorizing and perhaps spinning yarns or making radio interesting as to what could or could be out there. Now you have the internet and more information than ever before. But I'm here to tell you, dear listeners, sometimes more is less. When you have 10 pieces of information to try to piece together, to figure out what's going on, that is something that's actually rather finite. You could actually analyze all 10 pieces of information. You can discuss them, you can vet them, and you can decide which belongs and which doesn't. And based on that information, you can make an intelligent decision. We have much more access to many more pieces of information now. But I dare to say, if you have 10,000 pieces of information, nobody can research all that. No one can vet that. And it's hard to tell the fact from the fiction, the believable from the bogus. And different people believe different things. This guy believes this is 100% fact. That guy believes it's 100% bogus. And all it does is throw more mystery into the puzzle of whatever it is. Case in point, the whole COVID-19 thing. You can talk about the science behind Area 51, because they certainly talk about the science behind COVID-19. And that's the catchphrase of the day, isn't it? Everybody says, well, you got to follow the science. Okay, well, the science has 10,000 different theories by 10,000 different people. Translation, there is no true science. With Area 51, there was no true science. But like Sherlock Holmes, to find out what really existed in Area 51, you have to eliminate all the other possibilities. And what's left is the fact. If there was nothing there to see, why did they close Freedom Ridge? Why did they close Papoose Hill? Deny until they couldn't deny anymore. Slowly but surely, we're getting more information. The big, giant triangles that were seen in the late 90s and into today were referenced in this 1994 story as the Aurora secret aircraft. Now, why would you write about something in 1994 that doesn't come to fruition until 10 years later? That's not seen until 10 years later. That's evidence right there that there's something going on. Colonel Fravors' Tic Tac UFOs, Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy, Lou Elizondo's pieces of evidence that he talks about when working for the government. All has to be considered. Friends, this whole Area 51 UFO, I guess they don't call them UFOs, UAPs now, okay? Unidentified aerial phenomenon, because right-thinking people see a UAP. Tinfoil hat people see UFOs, but it's the same thing. But the more we go down this path, the more we see it. And one of these days, we may never get full disclosure. I don't think we'll ever truly get full disclosure, but we'll get more disclosure all the time. Perhaps less redacted all the time. And I believe we'll finally know more about Area 51 when all that we're talking about today are dead and gone. Well, that's it. I'm done. Hope you've enjoyed the podcast. The easiest way to get the podcast, golly, there's umpteen bajillion ways to get the podcast. Every media known to man, you can get it. iTunes, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Facebook, Twitter, TuneIn, Radio Online, Podcast app, YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcast. Actually, Google Podcast is hard to get. Castbox, SoundCloud, Deezer, GeoSavan for my friends in India, and of course, Spreaker.com. Easiest way, send me an email, jamesstrongshow@hotmail.com. Send me an email. I will put you on the mailing list. I'll mail it to you upon its publication, and you can download it and listen to it at your leisure. I also enjoy getting emails from people about the podcast, and I do answer my emails. That's it. We're done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.